When you think about a story in a video game, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably big, dramatic cutscenes, right? Or maybe tons of dialogue you have to click through. But what if the story isn't just something you watch? What if it's something you actually build, or discover, or even feel just by playing? Well, that's what we're going to dive into today. How games are totally rewriting the rules of storytelling.
So, think about the last huge open-world game you played. Be honest. Did you just charge straight ahead following the main quest to save the world? Or did you, get a little sidetracked? Maybe spend a few hours just messing around on the map, seeing what happens? That simple choice is exactly where this whole journey into game narratives really begins.
And this is probably the most familiar way games play with story. They give you this fundamental choice. Either you follow the path the developers carefully laid out for you, or you just ignore it completely and go make your own fun.
A game like Grand Theft Auto is the classic example of this, isn't it? On one hand, you've got this huge, pre-written narrative, a 58-mission epic about crime and betrayal. But on the other hand, you can just steal a really fast car, get the police on your tail, and suddenly you're creating a totally unscripted story of a wild, high-speed chase. One story is written for you, and the other is written by you, in real time.
Okay, but what happens when the choice isn't so obvious? Some games are a lot more subtle about it. They don't just hand you a story, they give you fragments, little pieces of a bigger picture, and they trust you to put it all together.
So the idea here has a bit of a fancy name, associative narrative mechanics, but it's actually a really simple concept. It just means the game gives you clues instead of answers. It hands you these loose threads of a story and leaves these intentional gaps, these voids, for your own imagination to fill in. And that's really the key. The game stops being just a storyteller. Instead, it's sending you an invitation to become a co-author, to be a collaborator in creating the narrative.
Take the game far, Lone Sails. It opens with this scene. And not a single word is spoken. You're just there. A tiny figure, a grave, a broken-looking tree. There's no opening monologue, no text explaining what's going on. Just this really powerful, silent image that is just loaded with questions.
And that is the central question, isn't it? Who is this person? What happened to the world? Why am I all alone? The game never actually tells you the entire story. The whole narrative is your journey to answer that question for yourself, using the little visual clues you find along the way.
So, we've gone from choosing a story to completing one. Now, let's take it a step further. What if there's no script at all? What if the story is something you can only discover by interacting with the world and figuring out its logic, no matter how strange that logic might be?
Let's look at the wonderfully bizarre game Feed the Head. The game starts and there's just this giant head on the screen, and it gives you one simple, very strange instruction. You're not talking to a character. Your very first interaction is a direct physical act on the world itself. And the result is equally bizarre. You tear off the nose and an eye falls out of the mouth. Now, that makes absolutely zero logical sense in our world, but it immediately establishes the game's own internal visual logic. The story of this game is literally just you learning its weird rules through trial and error.
And this isn't just a one-off gimmick. Other games, like Kids or Osada, build their entire experience on this principle. The story isn't found in text, it's found in that aha moment, that little spark of joy when you finally discover the rules that make this strange world tick.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most powerful concept. What if a game could tell a story without a plot, without words, without even traditional puzzles, but by making you feel an experience directly through its mechanics?
In the game Limb, there's no recognizable world. You are just a block. Your only actions are moving around and flashing your color, and other blocks react to you. Sometimes they trap you, sometimes they ignore you. It's incredibly abstract.
So as a player, you're immediately forced to ask, what does any of this mean? What's my relationship to these other blocks? Am I one of them? Am I an outsider? The mechanics themselves push you into this state of interpretation, where you're trying to find meaning in just pure interaction.
And here's the reveal. The developer, Merit Kopos, wasn't telling a story about blocks. She was using these abstract mechanics to make the player feel the experience of social violence. That feeling of being singled out, trapped, and ostracized without any of the usual power fantasies games normally give you. The story isn't in the game. The act of playing is the story.
So, we've gone on quite a journey here, huh?
We've gone from simply choosing a story path to actively completing one, to discovering a story through visual logic, and finally, to feeling a story through pure mechanics. Each step moves us further away from being a passive spectator and closer to being an active participant.
You can think of it like a kind of narrative ladder. With each step you climb, the game hands more and more responsibility for creating meaning over to you, the player. It shifts from just telling you what happened, to inviting you to figure it out, to finally just letting you experience it.
And that leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. As this whole medium keeps evolving, we have to wonder, what kinds of stories, what kinds of human experiences exist out there that just can't be watched in a movie or read in a book, but can only be truly, deeply understood by being played?